Okay. Should I do something like dramatic to? No. I just waved both my hands.
Oh, I can hear you now.
You can hear me? Cool.
But, there we go.
Yes, Ryan, that is a good point. Team Orange is probably behind this, would be my guess. Austin said he was playing dirty tricks. He didn't say what it was. I accused him of going directly to people and trying to, like, messaging them or emailing them. He said that wasn't what it is, but, you know, who knows? I'm a dumb internet guy and he's a genius, so who knows what he's done. But turnabout is fair play. That's all I'll say to that. All right, sorry about the audio, guys. Just at this point, that's pretty much 50% of the time that's what happens. So a couple things before we get going. Our grinders came in the day before yesterday. I ground 80-ish pounds through the 22 and really loved it. I had super cold pork. I had mostly like just defrosting venison, and I had pork fat. Put them all through a 3/8 first. Fat only went through a 3/8, and then through a 1/8 plate. When they were going through the 1/8 plate, the meat wasn't frozen. I didn't put it back in the grinder, and it chewed through it pretty easily. Now, that was super cold meat. I did some more today with just room temperature. I took a pork butt, or not room temperature, you know, fridge temperature. Chopped it up, put it through the 3/8, took it right back and put it through a 1/8 plate. Still worked really well. The only thing is, and it's just like anything else, you don't want to over jam that throat. So you want to put a little bit down, wait till it clears that auger, put a little bit more down. During the second grind, the goal really should be only to use the auger for when your meat gets caught up and just needs to be like tapped down. You don't want to be pushing it down, because what that's doing is it's smearing the meat before it even gets to the blade and knife. So just a quick note on that. What we're going to do today is talk about maintenance for your meat equipment. This comes from somebody who was wondering if I would go over how to use a steel, how to care for your knives. And I'll warn you right from the beginning, I am not the best with a steel, but we'll get into why that is. I have something much better than a steel at my disposal. Let me just real quick look through the chats. Resolution is much better, huh? Interesting. Must have been bad for a while. Don't know. Probably something. Patrick was complaining that there was a bunch of lag, so there might be a bad connection or something like that. So getting things kicked off. Steels, there are a few different types of steels. The two main ones are going to be this, which is an oval diamond steel. Not all diamond steels are oval, but the better ones tend to be. And a regular or polished steel. They have the same name, they look similar, but they do perform different functions. We only want to use a polished steel to realign and hone our blades. This is not going to sharpen a knife on its own. As you're cutting things, you know, your blade is making contact with the cutting board, whatever cutting surface, even whatever you're cutting. The edge of that blade is very, very fine. And it is occasionally going to get pushed out of ways, left or right. And if you run your hand along the blade, obviously carefully, and you feel like burrs, that's often what that is. It's just the blade pushed over. Using a steel like this will realign that and bring it back to however sharp it actually is. To use a steel, there's a couple of different ways to do it. The first tip I'm going to say is, as you're using this steel, your eyes should be focused on this tip. Don't watch your blade. Watching the blade is a good way to hopefully just hit the handle of this steel. It is also possible to get yourself in the hand with a knife. If you watch this tip, that's less likely to happen. Now, the two ways of sharpening a steel, you can do point down on a cutting board and run it down like this, but that can be a little bit challenging depending on what your environment looks like. So holding it out at about, the height of your neck is fair. With a slightly bent arm, you want to hold your knife up close to where the blade is. I actually like to get my first 2 fingers on the blade, which is what I like to do with chopping too. You want your steel to be 2 inches or more longer than your knife. You don't want to try using a 10-inch steel on a 10-inch blade. That's not going to work. So hopefully you guys can hear this. There's a sound we're looking for, and that's how you'll know if you have basically the right angle. So we're going to place the base or the tip of our steel against the base of the knife. We're going to keep our steel hand fairly steady, and we're just going to pull the knife down like that. Now you hear that sound. It's crisp, kind of sharp. If you hear that sound, that's no good. That real high pitch, quick sound, that's getting the base of the knife, not the edge. We want to be just on the edge, and we're watching that tip. So that's how you use a regular steel. Again, always 2 inches longer than whatever you're sharpening. This is a diamond oval steel. We're going to use it in the exact same way, but this can put an edge back on your knife. It's probably not going to take something that's as dull as like a butter knife back to a steak knife or something like that, but you can take a knife that's not cutting all that well back to something that's very serviceable. It's the exact same thing. We want to make sure that we have at least 2 extra inches. We're holding both of them by the base, and we're keeping an eye on that, and we're just pulling it down. And you can hear it. It is grabbing the edge of that knife and sharpening it. Now, this one will be a little bit more dramatic when I go too flat on it. You'll hear this. That's not a good noise. We want this. And we're just keeping our eye on that point, dragging the whole knife down across that. The advantage of an oval versus a flat is when we're doing this flat, the only part that's coming into contact with the knife is the very leading edge of this. When we're doing a oval, we have much more surface contact with the sharp, or with the edge of the blade. So we're sharpening a lot more at a time. So that's basically what I use the steel for. I have this one in here for when I'm doing large projects. I have this in here just for when I'm doing something I need to quickly realign the blade. What's better, a steel or diamond hone? I believe the diamond hone is just a steel. It's just a specific type of steel. There is one steel that we have that's by far better than everything else, or I've had best results with it. The problem, as you'll soon see, is the price tag that comes with it. They are not inexpensive. This one is fine, so I'll post that too. But the really good one is the F-Dick. It's the F-Dick Oval. There it is. So this is the one that I would recommend, but you'll see the price if you go to that. That's a little shocking, I guess, for a piece of metal. And here is a perfectly good one. Probably all anyone at home needs. You don't need to be spending $120 on a steel. Some of you might. Some of you might use it enough to make that worth it. Another option, and something I often have in here for just quick and dirty sharpens, is this Swiss Sharp. The Swiss Sharp is just basically a handle with 2 hard metal pieces in there that are somewhat sharp, and they form a V. So you can hopefully hear that. And you can see little metal shavings in there. So what's the downside of this? I mean, it does a good job. It puts an edge back on a knife, but it is ripping your knife away. I mean, it's sharpening it by just pulling tons of material away from it. So if you have really good knives, something like this is going to make you go through them a lot quicker. If you maintain a knife with a steel and a diamond sharpening steel, you're gonna be happier than if you just use this. Now, if you're somebody who goes through a bunch of knives and you don't really care, it's a perfectly good option, and it is a lot quicker and requires a lot less skill. The thing that has not forced me to be awesome with a steel is this thing. This is my baby, the True Hone. It is my very favorite thing that we sell here. I absolutely love this machine. I will sharpen anyone's knives here if they want them. I just love using it. It's incredibly satisfying and it's fairly quick. And to give you an example of how quickly it can put a nice edge back on a blade, I've got this old Walton's knife that has been abused in here. And when I try and cut a piece of paper, try better than that. Well, it's pulling at it. It's just not doing anything. I'm going to quickly sharpen this, and I'm going to mute you while I do it so it doesn't bother you guys too much. And I don't know how long that was, less than a minute. We went from an edge that absolutely wouldn't even cut into paper to, I mean, no problem. Goes right through it, nice and clean. It's not pulling, it's not tearing, it's just cutting it really nice. So that is the best way to get a really sharp edge back on your blade really, really quickly. For commercial processors, anyone who buys that, it's a large investment. I think it's like $1,500 now or thereabouts. Depending on how often you're pausing to resharpen knives, how much productivity you're losing through that, that absolutely can pay for itself. Lynn is mentioning the True Hone video. For anyone who joined us for our really long live stream, we were putting on a section of what first made me fall in love with that machine, which is one of the best pieces of advertising ever done. And I truly believe it was done unironically, but it is awesome. Just absolutely phenomenal. All right, any questions on steels, knives, anything like that? I will wait just a couple of seconds. Hi, Fat Bob. Full body cut glove. I mean, I've got somewhere around here, I've got my Hex Armor NXT cut glove. What that's got is, yep, there it is. So if Austin's watching, he's gonna hate this. But this is a cut glove. The entire thing has cut protection. But Hex Armor did a study and found that the majority of knife incidents occurred on these three fingers. So they gave it this extra protection, and it's a pattern that not only prevents you from slicing into it, but it also saves you, like you can't, I mean you could, I guess, but like I'm poking pretty good there and it's not going through. Can't cut through it. These things are awesome. I highly recommend these to anyone. For a while here, it was basically a rule that I had to wear one whenever I was cutting meat. But they are awesome. And I always have one on hand. If I'm doing anything approaching a large job of deboning pork butts, anything like that, that absolutely goes underneath a nitrile glove. You hardly even know it's there. It has most of the advantages of a chain link glove, but it's much easier on your hand. If you've ever worn one of those chain link gloves, your hand cramps after a while from having to force your hand to close. That is just like wearing a regular glove. So yeah, that thing is awesome too. Oh, nope, Austin was here. Yeah, so Hex Armor has sleeves, aprons. Yep. So we've talked a few times, people just amongst here, what we would do if we started our own butcher shop, anything like that, processor. And one of the things is all the new people would be covered head to toe in Hex Armor for at least a while until they knew what they were doing. One of the surprising ones is the belly. A lot of people pull this way, and I guess there are a decent amount of gut wounds from meat processing, which doesn't sound like something that makes sense, but it does happen. Okay, so moving on to grinders. So the number one thing I can tell you with grinders, well, two things actually are the most important in my mind, is one is this right here. This is white oil. I would never start my grinder without first oiling the plate and the knife. And I just take a paper towel, squirt a little bit of this on it, and just rub it on the surface of the plate. And then I take the knife, still same paper towel, and I just coat the leading edges of that. White oil is a highly refined mineral oil that's perfectly food safe, and it doesn't gum up. So when we start a grinder, the meat, even if it's already down the throat, isn't at the plate yet because it's got to travel down from the auger, bringing it down there. In those few seconds, your plate can create a lot of friction. That's going to heat the plate, which will damage your grind, and it's going to wear the plate. Once the meat gets down there, it should have enough fat, enough moisture, enough everything to coat it and keep that heat and friction down. But that initial grind or the initial spinning, if it has too much friction, damage your plates and knives and damage your grind as well. The other thing that's just a must for grinding, and this one probably annoys some people, but marry a plate with a knife. I use these zip ties. They've got a little latch I just push and they come right off. But marrying a plate and a knife, make sure that everything's gonna wear at the same rate. A lot of people have one knife and two plates and they just use that knife with both plates. Well, they're gonna wear at different rates. You're gonna use one more than you're gonna use the other probably, or at least longer. You're gonna use your smaller hold plate longer than you use your larger hold plate. So that knife is going to end up wearing the larger hold plate down quicker because it's in contact with the smaller hold plate more often, right? Yes. So it's going to get, that plate's going to get ridges, and that's going to affect the edge of the knife. And then when you come back over to your other plate, it's going to dig into it. So getting one plate with one knife, zip tying together so you know which is which, you're good to go. That's going to be the best way to extend the plates or extend the life of your plates and knives. Another thing, this is the new Walton's little number 8 kitchen grinder. So nice little grinder, but you have to have the right grinder for a job. I'm not going to try and do a deer through this. I'm not going to try and do a pig. If I have 5 pounds of something I need ground, I will go with something like this. If I'm doing larger batches, it's not designed for that. It's designed for small jobs. I'm not 100% sure, but I'd assume that there would be plastic gears in here. So I wouldn't want to run this for 20 minutes straight. And it's a good tool for certain jobs. Smaller jobs works great. But yeah, larger jobs, you need a larger grinder like that 22. And we will get a lot of stuff out on our grinders here in just a couple of days. By midweek next week, we'll have reviews for all of them, or reviews for the whole line, and more video of it running. So I get to grind more stuff and make more product, which is my favorite thing to do here. Another thing, with this style of grinder, it's not as big a deal. But for some of the Pro Cuts and other grinders, they do sell wrenches for your head. You only ever want to hand tighten this locking ring. You do not want to use a wrench or anything like that to tighten it down. Once you do that, you're going to create unnecessary wear on your plates and knives, and this is going to tighten as you go. It's always easier to tighten it down than it is to loosen it up once the grinder is run for a while. You're going to hurt your plates and knives that way, and it is really difficult sometimes to get them off. Those locking wrenches that they have for some of the bigger grinders are specifically for that, just because they hand tighten them down, and then occasionally it's impossible to get off with your hands, so they need a wrench specifically designed to do that. So only hand tighten down your locking head. If you're going to stuff sausage off your grinder, we don't recommend it, but they do have that function. It does give you that ability. Use a star stuffing adapter. And I have one of those here somewhere. This is a star stuffing adapter. It sits right here on your auger, the stud on the auger. And what it does is it prevents the auger from riding on the bottom of the throat. That's obviously going to damage your grinder. So this is simply designed to keep your auger and your stud straight in the middle of that. You can't just remove your auger, because the auger is what pushes the meat down. If you didn't have an auger in there, you'd put meat down there, it just wouldn't go anywhere, wouldn't stuff at all. Another thing when you're doing, if you're going to stuff off your grinder, I mean, stick to the largest casing, largest sausage you can do. The smaller sausages you try, especially snack sticks, creates a lot of wear and tear on the grinder, and it's not going to give you as quality a product. A grinder head brush is the easiest way to clean the throat of your grinder. This is our 22, and if I was cleaning it, I would simply stick it in there in a sink. It'd be in a sink. Twist it around, pull it out, put it back in a few times, and you're good to go on that. That can save a lot of time and frustration, and they're not expensive. We have them on the website. The other thing is clean. Well, check the manual that came with it, but my recommendation is clean everything on your grinder by hand. We've had, when I was in customer service, we had people who'd put their, I can't remember if it was the auger, I think it was the whole head assembly in their dishwasher, and it just ruined it all. Most of this stuff is not going to be dishwasher safe, so I would just go ahead and do everything by hand. I'm going to hop back over to chat real quick to see if there's any questions or anything. Will the white oil work on a slicer blade to reduce the friction and stickiness, especially when slicing cheese? And yes, we do sell white oil. I'll go ahead and grab that. So cheese can be a tougher one to do on slicers most of the time when you're doing cheese, unless it's specific types of cheese. You'll have like a serrated blade. I've done cheese on ours, but it's like the 2-inch by 2-inch, like extra sharp cheese, and that it slices right through. I'm assuming you're talking like larger diameter cheese. I'll give that a try and report back, but I don't know how that's going to do, to be honest, especially if you're trying to go super thin. I'd be afraid that it's going to pull a little bit and give you like a non-uniform finished piece of cheese on the other side. But I will check on that and get back to you guys. And then here's a link to the white oil. This stuff is super cheap. This I think is like $4 or $5, and it is actually I can tell you. $3.99, and that will last you years if you're using it only for grinding and for another reason we're going to talk about in just a bit here. All right, so that's for the white oil. Yep. Should I match stainless steel knife and plate? Can metals be mixed with no problem? Yeah, you want to use the same material when you can. I've never seen it happen, but I do know that there can be a shearing effect when metals of different density come into contact. I will give anyone a Walton's long probe thermometer to the first person who can tell me what movie that's from. Ooh. No guesses, huh? Metals of different, there's a shearing effect when metals of different density. All right, well, no guesses, so I'm moving on. Can white oil be used to lube the stuffer plate seal? Absolutely. We're going to get to that in just a second. All right, so I don't think I have anything left with are there any questions with grinders? On the larger models, so this whole thing is your auger. This little bit that sticks out here is called a stud. Your stud is what your plate and knife rest on. On some models, this stud can get worn and is replaceable. Those are generally larger commercial products like the Pro Cut, but I do believe a few of the other ones you can replace the stud on too. You won't need to replace the stud unless you're an incredibly heavy home grinder, but if you do, some of them can be replaced. So, all right, so on to mixers, and I've got to move a few things around here so I can bring them up. So just give me a second. Oh, one more thing on knives. A great thing you can do to help keep them sharp is either use a knife safe, which is this little thing right here. They sell them in all different sizes. Let me get it open. How do you open? There you go. Simply place your knife in there, close it. Now, not only is that not going to get dinged up, a drawer is the worst place for a knife. It's going to hit into other things. It's going to ding the blade. It's going to dull the blade. And if you got little ones, stick their hands up in there, cut pretty easily on a sharp knife. So this will prevent that. Another thing that I really like is the magnetic rack. Keeps it safe, keeps it out of reach of anybody that shouldn't be getting it, and protects the edge of the blade. So that's another super simple thing you can do. I keep moving things around here. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Walton's 50-pound mixer. Now there's actually a surprising little amount of maintenance that's required on these. I'll tilt this so you guys can see it. To tilt these, you just pull this out and tilt it down. I think that's pretty good. But what we want to do when we're doing this is not only how we load and dump all of the meat, but it's also how we're going to get the center paddle out. On this one, it is fairly easy. You simply pull this knob and it comes right out. So then you can clean this in a sink. I know of people who try to clean this without taking that out, and it's never going to work. You're always going to get little meat particles, fat particles in this and in that. I don't care how hot of water you use, how much soap you use. Pulling that out is going to make your life infinitely easier. Then you have to pull this out, and this just, you unscrew, knob comes off, comes through in the center. The first time you take that out, you're gonna see some meat stuck in your spring. It's perfectly normal, happens all the time. And then just to load it, right back in. And to put that back, notice the orientation of the bar that goes across the hole on this side. You want to line that up with this and get that in first. Actually, let me, well, this is going to be impossible. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. Sorry, guys, I have to have it up straight. I imagine that noise is really fun, so I'm going to mute you again. And I've managed to grab it. Sorry, guys. Whoa. All right, well, here's another good use of white oil. This gasket keeps getting caught trying to push it back in. So I'm gonna grab a paper towel. Pour just a little bit onto the paper towel, coat this edge, and now hopefully it's going to slide right back in. No, I don't know what I've done here, guys. That's embarrassing, but it's not going back in. I didn't think this spring was directional, but it might be. Let me try the other way. No, spring's not directional. What am I doing here? It's getting caught on something. All right, well, I will work on that at another time whenever, I'll work on that at another time when everyone's not watching. And I'll let you know why it was doing that. Could have been I've used it a bunch. Could be that the seal, that little rubber gasket, had degraded. I don't know. Or I could be doing something wrong. For the 20-pound meat mixer, this one's a little bit simpler. You just pull and then unscrew this and it's good to go. Now, you'll notice that these have threads on them. So as you're pushing it through and screwing it in, you have to make sure that the flat part lines up with these little tabs. Then you have to screw it in. Doing it this way, you're gonna see a good amount of the brass locking ring on the other side when it's fully screwed in, because it's gonna pull it this way. So this knob with the brass locker on the inside is gonna be more exposed. If the brass knob is pushed too far that way, you're not screwed in enough. Wonder how close I can get. So you can see this has a flat area and a round area. You've got to line up the flat area with the tabs on that center paddle. You just screw it in and it's good to go. I'm sure the chat is just loving the fact that I couldn't get that back in. Saw a lot of comments about Grandpa John too after our 13 Days of Christmas sale. That hurt. That was painful. push, sorry. And if you're cleaning this, obviously, you're gonna take this knob out and clean that and the brass as well. Unscrew this. Okay, it's a little bit loose. Push it through, start screwing it in. Make sure I'm lined up correctly, and I am. So, when I'm all the way in, I'm seeing way more of this brass connector over here than I am on this side. Ooh. This is not a 11% beer, unfortunately. It's just an energy drink. So yes, getting on to the pour and sip. Sorry, sometimes I forget we're live. When I do videos all the time, I'm able to do whatever I want, and occasionally I just get caught up in something else, and I forget that you guys are sitting there watching. So that was actually probably one of the more fun videos we got to shoot. There was one from last year's New Year's Eve where we got to include almost everybody from Walton's. That was awesome. We're going to try and do something like that again for our New Year's sale. But that was a lot of fun recording that. Patrick had the idea. I knew I wanted an advent calendar. That's all I knew. He came up with everything else. So, yep, good. I'm glad to hear the mixers are working great. Let us know if you have any problems with them. Fat Bob says, there you go, now two are broken. No, just one. The other one worked. What's your opinion on using a food-grade silicone spray to coat the inside of the mixer, stuffer, or grinder head to ease cleaning? So a mixer, I don't know that I care. I think that would probably be fine. Yeah, I think it'd probably be fine. For a stuffer and a grinder, I'd say no. Reason being that no matter how well it adheres, some of it's going to come off, which is fine because it's food safe. It's not going to hurt you, but it could mess up your stuffing and definitely your grinding. If that at all gets caught, especially if you're doing like a 1/8 grind, if that gets caught in the heads or the holes of the plate, I'm going to try that. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to quickly, if I had a pen, I'd just write it down. But I'm going to quickly email myself that idea because I do really like that. So a food-grade silicone spray to aid in cleaning. I probably will ask our application specialist before I try it. But yeah, no, I definitely like the idea. Food grade. And in chat, did anyone guess what that quote was? No, it doesn't look like anyone did. Papa Stop, that was brutal. We did it twice at different angles. First one, no problem. Second one, I kept getting a dry mouth, probably from salivating from looking at the whiskey there. But yeah, so that one took forever. Patrick did a great job editing though, so all good. Who's going to put that stuffer back together for you? Because I'm not sure you're mechanically inclined enough. Yeah, and we're going to take it further apart. So stuffers, first thing, somebody else alluded to it, absolutely use white oil to coat this piston gasket. This is the best thing to use. I've tried some other stuff and nothing works quite as well as the white oil for this function. The next thing you want to see is you want your air release valve, which is this little valve right here, to be moving freely. And basically you want to see the top portion of this valve through the bottom plate. So as you're looking through this way, you want to just barely see that top portion. So you want it open fairly well. You want it to be moving easily. This is going to help prevent air getting pushed into your casing. If you've ever done it before, it usually explodes the casing, or at least causes a big air pocket in your casing, and it's a pain. This helps prevent that. And then these are directional. These do have an up and a down. You want the side that has a gap, so the side where the lowest portion of the piston gasket is furthest inside. You want that facing down. If you do it the other way, stuffer will still work, but you not run the risk. You will have more meat escape around the piston as you're trying to push it down. Some of it will come up over and be on the top of your piston. It's not the end of the world. You just back it out and put it back in. But yeah, anything you can do to avoid any mistake is always worth it. So then for stuffers, other than the white oil, which is definitely the big one, we have basically a gearbox and a metal frame, right? Gearbox has 2 gears on it, top and bottom. The top is the high speed, the bottom is the regular. The top should not be used to stuff. It is a reverse only. It's so that it doesn't take you, a minute or two to get the piston from the bottom to the top while you're backing it out so you can refill it, or when you're done. Hit this and it goes right up. But should never be stuffed on. Not designed for it, will definitely damage your grinder. Low gear, that's what we want to use for the stuffing. Now this is we call it the arm. The part, or the side that has a hole in it, that's the part that we want down. Now, I've already removed this, obviously, but getting it back in is fairly simple. Just push it up like that. And to take it out, the first thing you have to do is take out this bottom plate. There are 4 screws down there. They simply unscrew. So take this out, bring it all the way down, and bring it out through the back. Pretty easy to do. Then there are 4 screws on either side of this top portion. The only reason that we would have to do what I'm about to do is because we either have to replace the gearbox, or we need to lubricate it. Food grade silicone is a great use for this, not the spray. We sell a little food grease. That would be the best thing to use for this. If you happen to be stuffing and you notice little tiny pieces of metal shaving on top of this box, stop what you're doing. Even if at that point all you have is white oil, use that. But to take this off, we've undone all 4 of these screws on each side, and we're gonna pull down, tilt back, and it comes right out. The gears are back here, and as you can see, when I guess I'm not strong enough to do that by itself. When I turn this top one, the large one's moving directly. When I turn the bottom one, it's moving indirectly. So it's another gear affecting this gear and making it move. That's why the top gear is so much faster. It's direct to the big gear. So if we needed to replace the gearbox, there are bolts here and here and here and here. We would we'd loosen those. Then we take one side out, we take the other side out, but we'd keep our hand down here because it is possible for this to fall right down. Generally, it's not going to, because even with these bolts out, you still have these 2 gears sticking through the base. That's usually enough to keep it there, but just to be sure, have a hand down there. Pull this side out and pull it right down. Now, when you're replacing it, with this one, we're not taking anything out. When you're replacing it and you put the gearbox in, you need to make sure that both of these gears are centered in this hole. How I generally do that is I put the gearbox back in, I lightly put the bolts back on, just really so it's holding it there. I then align those so they're in the very center, and then I tighten everything back up. Then for reattaching the hood, It's just the exact opposite of what we were doing. And you just kind of play with that until it's up. You've got your screw holes to realign. It's not that hard to do. Then put your arm back in before you put your plate back on. You can't, or you're gonna have a heck of a time getting your arm back in if this bottom plate is already put on there. So just a word to the wise. I've done that a time or two. Let's see if there's any questions on stuffers. Gasket wider V down to the meat. Wider. Oh yeah, it is wider. All right, that's a good way to do it. So the wider V is down towards the meat. Cool. I always spray my stuff with food safe spray after cleaning. Makes the plunger move more smoothly. I also lube the piston gasket with food safe. Cool. Nope. John, it comes ready to use. The only thing that we would recommend, wash the piston, wash the canister, and any of the stuffing tubes that you're using. Anything that's going to come directly in contact with food. I mean, it does still have oil on it from when it was made. So just recommend you do that. For the last thing I was planning on talking about today, until we can just talk about whatever, is smoker maintenance. And really the big one is cleaning. So there's obviously a bunch of different types of smokers. If you have a pellet grill, that's cleaning a grill. You know how to do that. With a smoker like the PK100, one of the biggest advantages is they don't want you to spray it down and clean the cabinet, which makes my life so much easier. I absolutely adore it for that. But all the grates, anything that goes in there, you want to keep those clean just for a food safety aspect, from a aesthetics aspect. Plus, it really does feel oddly great to get something that looks gunky and just clean it up. And this is Walton's Smokehouse cleaner. Now this, I believe, well, you can't even tell. This is a different color than what it actually is. I believe this to be just an older bottle that I found in our test kitchen. It is now yellow, but this is a non-caustic chemical that will help loosen up any gunk, any buildup. Just mix this with some water, let it sit in the sink, and then come back with a scrub brush and it'll come right off, really nice and clean. For anyone who's got a pressure washer, if you have good racks, good metal racks for your smoker, you should be able to do that as well. That can be a nice, easy way to do it. But when you're cleaning your smoker, if you do clean the inside cabinet, be cognizant of the fact, if you have an electric one with, like the PK100, that burn pot is down at the bottom, or the coil is down at the bottom. Any water you get in there, it starts to make its way down towards that. You don't want water to get into that cavity. It can cause all sorts of problems. So just be cognizant of that. All right, let's see if anyone else has questions. How do I store the stuffer? I put the handles and tubes on it, then crank it so it just touches. Any thoughts from storage? Yeah, no, I usually store it with the canister in, the piston attached to the arm, but the gasket not around the piston. So what I do is I put the arm in, I attach this, I push this down all the way to the bottom, drop this in there so I know it's where it needs to be. I leave the handle sometimes on, sometimes off. It's just, we have a glass top cooking surface, and we've been having a lot of earthquakes recently. We've had like 3 in the last 4 days or something like that. And I just worry about it falling off, or me hitting it and falling off and doing that. So sometimes I don't leave it on there. And then I leave usually my 12mm tube, because snack sticks seems to be what I make the most. I just leave that on there. Everything else I've got a drawer for. But yeah, no, it sounds like what you're doing is perfectly fine. Dave, sanitizer recommendations. There is the Maxim hard surface sanitizer. So this is a simple way to sanitize things, and it's what I use here by far the most. Anytime I'm done cleaning something, stuffer, grinder, just a couple of shots of that and just let it sit there. That's the best way I know to do it. I also often will sanitize before I use though. So it's like before I start processing. It's probably overkill, but it's not hurting anything. And I give a lot of my food out to people here, and you know, sometimes I send it to people. I just get worried. So I just try to make sure that I'm keeping as much danger out of what I'm doing as possible. They do also have, so a commercial kitchen or processing plant is often going to have a 3-sink setup. So you have washing in the first one, which is where you're trying to remove gunks of meat, fats, oils. Then you have rinsing, where you're trying to get any soap residue off. And then you have sanitizing. So you'll have a soapy mix in your first one, a clean mix, usually with a sprayer on the top of the second one. And the third one, you're going to dip in that sanitizer and then leave it out to dry. So that's usually how that goes. Yep, sanitize. I mean, it's inexpensive and it's easy, especially with these are the wipes, which are hard to get right now. Wipes, I really got relying on, but yeah, they've been very difficult to get. So just been using the spray. Sockets, yeah, we were just talking about the bolts up here, how you would remove the gearbox. I can't talk today. How you would remove the gearbox. We didn't take it out because I don't need to. But if you do want to see that, that process is Meatgistics University Meat Processing Equipment 203. I think it's meat process, or I think it's sausage stuffers 203, maintenance for your sausage stuffer. I also go over the grinders in a little bit more detail, the mixers, but those are the old mixers. I'm going to have to redo those. Those aren't our mixers, so I'll have to redo that. Oh, yeah, no, not yet. Okay, I get what you're saying. Somebody on Meatgistics or the live stream, I think it was Meatgistics, was talking about a Ratchet Stuffer. I've already talked to people about that here. That is something we are absolutely looking into. So here's the advantage of that. When I'm stuffing from here to here on a 33-pound stuffer through snack sticks, no problem. I've got all the leverage, move that piston all day long. From here to here, I'm losing leverage and it's taking more force to make that back. What the advantage of something like what Papa Sop is talking about is from here to here, go, it's gonna move it down. Then I'm gonna bring it back to where I have maximum leverage, but it's not gonna move the gear. So your piston's gonna stay there. I'm gonna go this. So it's a lot easier. It's a very, very good idea. So yeah, we're gonna look at getting those for our stuffers. If we are able to, we will absolutely make it where it is backdatable. That's not the right, where it would work on our current version, so you could just buy the handle. I store my grinder plates with knives in a Ziploc bag with dry rice. Dry rice. I heard dry ice, or I read dry ice. Like, I don't think that's a good idea, man. Only thing, that's all gonna depend on if whatever bag or container that's in gets jostled a lot. If it doesn't, yeah, that's perfectly fine. If it does, I mean, you run the risk of a edge of a blade getting poked into the plate. And I mean, while these are metal, they will scratch, you can ding them. So Just somewhere where they're not going to be jostled about a bunch is definitely the best. But no, I think the dry rice is actually a good idea. All right, so I will hang around for another couple minutes just to see if anybody has any other questions. Grinder plates and knives in the freezer. I mean, do you do that full time, or you just do that like the night before you're grinding? Sometimes if I have a huge job, I'll put the entire head assembly in the freezer. Differing opinions on whether or not that actually does anything. I've talked to very knowledgeable people who say that it doesn't actually have any effect, but we've said it before. I'll take a 1% improvement, because with the 10 other things I'm doing that are going to give me that tiny little edge, I'm going to make a significantly better product. So even if it's just that I think it works. So matched plates and knives in an oil paper towel. I mean, that is the best way to go. Yeah. I'm sure that's fine. I have a visceral reaction to that for some reason. I don't have a good reason for it. I'm sure it's fine. And I say it all the time. I might not even say it enough. If you have a process that is working for you and you're getting the results you want, keep doing it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with whatever you're doing if you're getting the results you want. If you're not getting the results you want, that's when you should look at maybe making some changes. Or if you just think it's possible to get a better product, longer life out of something like that, then look at changing your process. Okay, so a lot of articles, videos talk about putting all grinder parts in freezer overnight. I keep mine cold, but the one time I kept them in overnight, the meat stuck solid to the auger. Yeah, water content of your meat is also going to play a part there. If you put super wet meat down there, even though it's moving, it definitely can happen. So. Papa Sop says he lets them hang. Do you literally, do you have a nail in a wall or something that they sit on? Do you tie them up? For some reason, I can't get Austin's annoying email off my page. All right, guys, I assume that's it. I don't see any new questions coming through. If you found this stream and you're not a Meatgistics user, go on over to meatgistics.com. The movie quote was Ocean's 13. It's when the guy's doing the thing that digs the tunnel underneath Las Vegas. So. All right. Thanks, guys. Ooh, maybe we'll make that a thing. Try to remember to do a movie quote for each live stream and give something away to the first person who comes up with something or comes up with the right answer. Yeah, I'll try to do that. All right. See you guys.